1 o'clock on Wednesday, August 23rd. I'm going to read off the agenda because there's an amendment to it, and I'll need a motion to approve it. Public comments, personnel, off-contract, fiscal year 18 wages.
That is also a change because we did that in June, so that should be eliminated.
Okay,
Yep.
so that's removed. No, so I won't worry about that one. And then finance operation-related treasurer reports, June and July, donation from New England Grassroots Environment Fund, food service contract extension, consent agenda for the normal items, no policy this time. Superintendent's report on Act 46, SVSU Act 46 Committee Chair Don Campbell will be here also. Chair reports, other, and there's information for you guys. And some of that information, one of the amended things was to decline the position people. What's your pleasure?
I move we amend the agenda as read by the chair.
Second.
Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Do we have any public comments tonight?
Yes.
Jackie.
I just have a question. Are you going to allow comments during, Jackie Prue, are you going to allow comments during the Act 46?
I will allow questions. We're not here to debate,
No, questions.
but I will allow questions if there's information that warrants that, but not, we're not going to be here to debate and have arguments between people. Okay?
Remember.
Okay, any other public comments? And I should be clear, that doesn't mean that the board can't ask questions and do that, but the public will also be kept under respectful discussion.
Sorry, just a clarification on the agenda. Nelson, we added, we deleted 2A, is that?
Yes, A,
Yes.
Okay, because we've already
and we,
taken care of that.
and B is not ready.
So we number 2 was completely deleted.
So,
Yeah,
thank you.
Okay?
we do not have the completed language back on B.
Okay. Any other comments on the agenda before I move? Okay.
That was, oh, we
Okay,
have,
going to finance operation related.
yeah, I was gonna say, you have a new, oh, we have a new one, because I was gonna say, there was some things I tried to find that I couldn't find.
Yep.
And,
Okay. Finance operations treasurer report for June and July. I need somebody to accept
So
the
moved.
report.
Second.
Got a motion to approve. I heard, I didn't see who.
Yeah,
Motion and a second.
second from your wife.
Any discussion on the treasurer report? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
This is
Some
on
people,
both of them?
yes, for both. Both June and July was the motion. Am I correct in saying that? You made a motion for both months?
Yes.
Okay.
That's what's on the agenda.
Okay, donation from New England Grassroots Environmental Fund.
so
Move we
moved.
accept? Second.
Any questions on that one?
Yeah, what
What
is
is
it?
it?
Can
$750.
someone answer that?
What are the stipulations for receiving the money?
Unfortunately, Renee wasn't able to be here this evening. She's at open house for the high school, so I don't have specific answers for what that was. I'm looking.
Do we have it in our packet?
It's in the package, but it didn't go into the
It is in the
details.
packet.
Okay, what does it say in the packets?
It doesn't go into the rationale behind it.
$750.
The seven- Right.
It's just a letter saying, congratulations, Mount Anthony Union High School Ideals Programs, recent seed grant from the New England Grassroots Environment Fund.
Right.
The question for the public is what's ideals? And what does it mean? What do we have to do? And- Yeah, Who do right. we have to sell to get it? That's right. It says, we have many resources to offer you, all apparently free, and as benefits to joining their grantee community. But it doesn't actually say what
It
you're going to
recommends
do.
that they encourage you to register online and connect with the group, so I think it's networking.
Have we had this before, Jim?
Well, I
You've had
guess,
the Ideals program
Well,
for
I know
years
the
at the high
Ideals
school.
program, but
Yeah.
Is this new,
Yeah.
this,
I don't have that
grassroots?
information.
well, if the board wishes, we can move to table it until the next meeting when you can find something out about it.
No,
I'm just curious.
Yeah, I'd like to know what the stipulations are,
That's-
Is there any timeline on acceptance of this?
Nothing in my notes says that, no.
Your choice, guys.
You might need it for the beginning of school.
I had a motion and a second, right?
Yeah, I withdraw the motion
Okay.
until we can find out what's going
And
on.
if the person that seconded withdrawing as well? Okay.
Yeah,
Yeah, it
So-
looks like there's a link in there, but you can't, it's not
I'm
active.
not getting
Yeah,
the
the
link
link.
here.
Yeah, you can't activate it, so I think we probably need to
I move we table.
link it to figure.
I got a motion to table it. Get a second?
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye, then we can discuss it, when we know more about it. Thank you. Okay, food service contract extension.
So you are currently have a contract with the Abbey Group, and this is, it has a renewal option in there in the recommendation.
reason not to
Okay.
extend it this far.
And
Extension of the current contract.
did that contract have in it a statement that basically talked about review at the end of the year and extension? Is that what you're saying?
Yes.
Yep.
Okay.
And then Finance made that recommendation based on that.
Had a motion, I had a second. Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Consent agenda.
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion on any of them?
Which minutes are involved here?
There is the minutes of the carousel, our last regular meeting.
Which was June? Okay.
June 28th.
June 28th, yeah.
carousel meeting just came
And it
out
would be the
today.
carousel.
in there? I don't think there are.
No,
You
they
don't have
just,
the minutes
you
for
just
that?
got them today. You just send them
Oh,
out, so they're
okay,
not
so they're
here,
not
so.
here yet? Okay, we'll have to do them the next meeting. I know I read them today, so.
They're August anyway, so.
No, just June 28th.
Okay, so I've got them just for the
June
1 month.
28th. Yeah, that's all.
Okay, and I had a motion and a second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
That's for all of them. No policy. Superintendent report.
Before I turn this over for an Act 46, I just want to use this public forum to talk about a question that we're hearing from a lot of people about the opening of school. And right now, it looks good that all schools will open on time, but I'm not prepared to make a formal announcement on that until Friday. There's still one thing particularly about getting technology back up and running in the BSD schools to clear. But I toured all the BSD schools yesterday. The classrooms are clean. Construction is completed also in the classroom. A couple of rooms at Molly that still need some work. People need to understand that the floors don't look as beautiful as the floors in this room here at the middle school. There isn't enough time to strip them and wax them. They've been washed. The surfaces, all flat surface, been washed. Hallways are not completed yet, but they got their final. I got word of final electrical inspection this morning. Was completed yesterday. The state came back and did those completions yesterday. And as far as in Shaftesbury, the contractor for the asbestos removal set up today, encapsulated today. That will start tomorrow and continue through the weekend and should be done. And so I don't think we're completely in the clear yet, but we hope to be able to allow the BSD teachers into their classrooms at the beginning of next week to start to set up. But like I said, just waiting for one more clearance to announce that. So we've gotten, I know board members have gotten a lot of inquiries. I've gotten a lot of inquiries, and people are anxious, staff are anxious. So the news is good, but everyone needs to understand that these classrooms are not going to look, and the school's not going to look as good as it has in the beginning of school before, which, it always looks wonderful. The crews do a great job cleaning, as you can see in this building. But they will be clean, and let's not forget the goal. It's going to be well-lit, well-heated, well-ventilated buildings, and improved environment for all our students. It's been an amazing push for construction in such a tight timeline. With that said, Nelson had asked for me to give an update on the work of the Act 46 Formal Study Committee, and we both decided that we would probably prefer to have the chair of that committee, Don Campbell, come and give that presentation. And I just want to say, Don has done a wonderful job of shepherding that committee and being a spokesperson for it, and to really get involved into the details. So, and remaining positive throughout what is difficult, trying to shepherd many different ideas into one direction and be accommodating for everyone and let everyone be heard. So with that introduction, the chair of the Act 46 Formal Study Committee, Don Campbell. And they're going to want you to grab them. Yeah, it might be easier if you come up here, then you can use my mic. Excuse me.
So, Act 46 has been a lot of fun. I just spent an hour and a half on the phone with Matthew Patterson, who's up north skinny dipping or something. I'm not sure exactly what he's doing, but he was doing something up there. He might be watching live too, so we have to watch out what we say.
So skinny dipping is okay.
Well, I said that more or less for him, to make sure that he was watching. So.
He's doing job training. Skinny dipping, I don't know about.
Oh, he's all about that. So I would say that one of the things that Matthew and I talked about is that everybody does hate a good compromise. And it feels to me like there's probably a lot of things about this that will feel like a compromise to everybody. How much time do you want to spend on this, and what do you want to know? Would you like an overview? Would you like to just shoot questions at me? Would you?
I think an overview of what the committee has done to date. We should make assumptions that everyone knows what's been going on and take all the time.
Okay. Well, so this is the third iteration of the Act 46 committee. The first Act 46 committee worked really hard, then it reconstituted, and at some point in the middle of that second iteration, they invited some citizens to join. I was invited to join at that point. And we worked really hard to get to a point where we felt like we were onto something, trying to shoot for an MUU SD, which is a kind of configuration that we can talk more about later, with a certain board configuration and a number of other very specific details. But as we got closer and closer, we realized that that some people in the room felt like it was not what they had expected, and that they were going to be part of a mandatory study committee. So we decided that it would be best to disband and come back on a voluntary basis. So we disbanded the committee and allowed, which would allow other communities to come back in a way that was less binding of the outcome. And in that third iteration, we started that this spring, I guess. We didn't have the ability to have North Bennington with us, which was a loss for us, but we did. I took it as our charge to kind of pick up the work that Jackie Prue had so skillfully gotten us along with, and to try to see if there's some way that we could not start from scratch, but pick up where the second committee had left off and look at the numbers and look at the overall impacts of what might happen. So We engaged a consultant named Dan French, who may be familiar to some of you from his work up in Manchester. And he came down, and he's been through this with a number of communities. So he had taken a number of communities successfully through this. And he didn't want to just pick up where we left off. He really wanted to start at the beginning. And so we did. We went back to the beginning on some of the stuff that the other committees had done, but we did it pretty quickly because it's a very complicated law, and probably a lot of you know much more about it than I do, but there are a number of incentives for merging at this point, and they could mean a lot to the various communities. So just for example, the town of Bennington taxpayers would save something in the order of $1.8 million if this merger goes through, just from the incentives, let alone from the efficiencies that would be realized. Now, if you divide that out over the number of households, it's not a very big number, as Matthew pointed out to me, and it's a relatively small number actually. But nevertheless, would be a real tax savings to Bennington, and Pownell would have. The other communities would have a similar savings based on these incentives and the education payments. I haven't calculated those for the other communities. But more than the money, I think it's really important to remember, as Jackie kept reminding us in the last version of this, that this is about the children. This is about not just the money. This is about trying to deliver better educational content and trying to do better with our school system. And so the goals that we set out, and this is all laid out. Have you seen the merger study report and articles of agreement? Has this been circulated?
It was,
Okay.
it was sent out
Okay.
to the board.
So then you've seen, the summary, and we spent some time on this in the beginning, but it bears just saying again that equity in quality of education is really important and is something that we felt like was a top priority. Greater consistency and better coordination. Fewer intermediary steps, fewer layers of oversight. No offense, you guys do a great job on the SU, but fewer board layers and a more streamlined delivery of educational services. The second one is higher achievement of students. So more teaching, less management, better monitoring, those kind of things. The third aspiration is really more flexibility, the ability to transfer resources. So less time spent on budgets, more efficient grant processing, fewer handoffs, and better deploying, better use of the expertise that we have. The fourth goal that we set out was increased transparency. So the idea that it would not be quite so difficult to understand exactly how the school money gets spent, that there would be one budget, that there would be one tax rate, that there would be one board instead of 7. Right now we have 7 boards for, 2,000 students, that if a merger did happen, potentially you could have 1 or 2 boards in the end and have a much more streamlined system. And better educational value for citizens. There are a lot of financial efficiencies that would be realized, and we talked about them at some length. So having gone through that, we had to then talk about if we were to set up a merger, what would it look like? And I think the guiding principle that we kept coming back to is that the MAUHS model, which was more or less created for Bennington or by Bennington, has worked well for Bennington. It's a good model that's been solid, and communities have been represented, and it has worked for us. We have a very effective group that's working at that level. And so instead of creating a brand new model and having everything be different, to try to use the hybrid at large, that's jargon, but the hybrid at large model where every community would have a certain number of representatives, so that you wouldn't end up with all the representatives coming from Bennington or all the representatives coming from one community and having another community feel that they had no representation. After that, we had to decide which communities would be necessary and which communities would be advisable. And we decided, in the first iteration, we thought maybe everybody should be advisable. Turns out you can't do that. You have to have somebody that's necessary. And so in this iteration, Bennington was determined to be a necessary community, and all the other communities were determined to be advisable. And there are a lot of layers of what that means, but I might just leave it there for now. We talked a little bit about the incentives. I mentioned that there's a 8% and then 8 cents and then 6 cents and 4 cents, 2 cents incentive on the school tax for 4 years that would, if you multiply that over the whole grand list, would be substantial money. That it would preserve Woodford's small school grant, which is identified as a priority to keep that school going so that they don't get annihilated. And to save roughly $100,000 in efficiencies that would be seen by not having to have quite so many duplicated efforts. So that took us up pretty much to our last meeting where we reviewed this document, and maybe some of you saw it on TV and maybe some of you didn't. This is the Merger Study Report and Articles of Agreement. So this is the Act 40, the formal Act 46 committee's suggested process for merging school boards into one school district called the Mount Anthony Union School District. So that what we've proposed in this is that Bennington, Pownell, Shaftesbury, Woodford, and North Bennington be considered, that Bennington would have to be a part of it, but that the other communities could either vote yes to be part of it or no not to be part of it. And if fewer than 3 communities agree to do it, then the whole thing is moot and it doesn't go forward. So right now we're heading, if we stay on track, which we may not, but if we stay on track, we're heading for a vote this fall on whether or not to merge these school boards by community. And I think it's probably really important to say that this was not about getting rid of schools. This was not about getting rid of teachers. This was about finding greater efficiencies by having fewer school boards and by having a really focused group of people that would look at these 2,000 students and decide what was best for them. And I also want to say that many of my good friends live in North Bennington, and long before we got involved in this, North Bennington had kind of charted their own course on which direction they wanted to take their educational system. And it's been a personal goal of mine to try to figure out something that would work for every community. Maybe not perfect, but something that would work for every community. I think, as John Peasley said in one of our meetings, the state is going to merge communities that don't merge themselves. So we can either merge on our own terms now and take some number of millions of dollars of tax incentives, or we can do nothing and the state will come down and they will merge us mandatorily. And we won't have a lot of control over how that happens. So what the committee decided is that to the extent that we could, we wanted to steer in the small realms that were available to us and try to steer things in a direction that was as fair as could be, and steer things in a way that would be familiar to people, the way the Mount Anthony Union High School board structure is, and that we would offer some security to the outlying towns so that they would feel like their schools weren't going to be closed right away, if at all, and that we would combine finances, both assets and debts, and that we would just throw it all in a big pot, and we would move on from there. And so as John said, do we want to do this for ourselves, or do we want the state to come down and do it? And I think that's where we got to. But what I started to say a minute ago was, for my friends in North Bennington, I know that this process has not worked very well for you. And
Is this something that they want?
Hold
Or
on.
is this something they're gonna make?
You wait a minute, and I'll let you speak. I want to make sure that
Yeah.
Dan says what he's saying.
so I think it's very complicated, and there are many things that are too much for one meeting tonight. But I want everybody to know that North Bennington has tried hard to be part of this process and tried hard to be a productive part of this process. Very recently, we've had some. It's difficult right now because for us to merge, North Bennington would have to take a vote that they feel they shouldn't have to take, and that's an understandable point of view. And so, but without that vote, there's no point in us voting either. So we're at kind of a hard spot right now. It's not worked out. That's why I was talking to Matthew for such a long time. We're trying to figure out if there might be some way through this. But I would say, here's what the committee came up with as the best compromise that we could think of.
And I could add that this is on the SVSU website. If you go to the Act 46 block on the bottom of it, and then click down to Act 46 documents, the final version of that is on the website.
But it's a lot's going to happen in the next month. So either something will get warned and there'll be a vote and there'll be a lot of talk about this, or we'll be at a legal impasse and we won't be able to move forward. And I'm just going to say it again, it's not all North Bennington. This is a difficult law. It doesn't fit all communities. I think this greater community is trying hard to see what we can do that will work for everybody, but it may be that it's it may be that it's a knot that is too difficult to untie in a couple of months, but we're going to try.
Does the board wish to ask questions first, or would you want the public to do their?
Don, could you please, I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
Don, could you please speak in a little bit more detail about what you mean, either a vote is warned or it's not and it becomes moot? Could you kind of put a finer point on that, please?
I'm a layperson on this board, so I'm going to do the best I can. But Jim, kick me under the table when I go off the rails on this. As I understand, so Act 46 is many different laws that have come down. It's not just one law, it's all these different laws that are kind of layered on top of each other. As I understand what our consultant is telling us, and that may not be the final legal answer, okay? But what our consultant is telling us right now is that in order for this merger to take place, all of the school boards need to take a vote on this proposal, including North Bennington. Okay, so North Bennington, and so several of the communities could turn it down, and may well turn it down. As long as there are 3 communities that vote for it, that's considered enough by the state to move forward. And one has to be Bennington. So if Bennington, Shaftesbury, Pownell wanted to move forward, great. Bennington, Woodford, Shaftesbury, great. I think that maybe what I got from my conversation with Matthew this afternoon is the one assumption that really bedeviled me in this summer as we were racing along trying to get this done, is that I had always assumed that North Bennington was just going to flatly vote this down. And so we didn't put a lot of thought into what would happen if North Bennington didn't vote it down. In fact, we didn't put any thought into that, really. We just assumed that North Bennington would vote this down. So we've kind of been, I take responsibility for this, but not paying enough attention to the what if on the North Bennington side. We've just been sort of pushing that aside, saying, well, they have to take a vote, but they'll just turn it down. So that's one community that votes it down. Maybe Pownell will choose to vote it down. Maybe Shaftesbury will choose to vote it down. But as long as we have 3, we have a successful merger. Now, when the districts that do choose to merge, they see those incentives. So again, it's not all about the money, But, you know, a couple $1 million for the taxpayers is something that I would really like to make happen if possible. At very least, I'd like the taxpayers to have a chance to vote on it. Maybe they all vote it down, but it doesn't feel like I should be making that decision or we should be making it. It feels like the taxpayers should have the ability to kind of decide on that.
There's a couple of statements on it. You're talking about North Bennington, but if any of the towns choose not to warn this to vote, it's dead.
Yeah, that's right.
what our consultant.
That's what our
is telling us.
consultant is telling us. And honestly, Act 46 and all of the underlying acts and overlaying acts are a tangle, and I think even Montpelier is not entirely sure how it.
Because the question would be, if not scheduling a vote, does that constitute a no vote, which would still, we have some varying opinions on that. Our consultant's saying no, our attorney is saying possible.
And is that because of the way MAU was put together, where all districts have to vote on issues? Because there was a time there when certain things, when they vote, and if one voted no, it was dead. Is that what's driving this, or is it something else?
One of the reasons this is complicated is because there's the MAU, all these schools are in the MAU, and so as a result of that, we can't, according to our consultant, we can't not have anyone who's in the MAU voting. Now, there are differing opinions on this, and I think that we're in the process of working that out. And I'm not really comfortable talking about this part of it because honestly, I spent most of today trying to work it out and trying to figure out what's going on and talking to Montpelier, and I don't know. But I can talk about this part.
It's because I guess the understanding is that it's a K through 12 board.
Right.
And because students in those towns go to the 7 through 12 portion of it, is that the naughty portion.
Right.
That's what makes it all a little
right.
Because it's
fuzzy.
one part of a whole.
And so there are a lot of different models, and honestly, in the second iteration, I don't know what happened in the first iteration. In the second iteration, we spent a lot of time talking about them. When this started out, so June 13th, we had Donna Russo-Savage come down from the Agency of Education, and we said to her, just tell us what's possible. We just want to know what we can still do. And we'd like to know what options are open to us. And she said, you can do a unified union school district. You can do a unified union school district with a modified unified union school district fallback. You can do a union elementary school district, or you can do a Section 9 proposal, which is to take no action. And those were the four options that she gave us at that time.
May I speak to this?
Yeah.
This is not accurate. Act 49 was passed by the last legislature, and Act 49 proposed and was approved and signed by the governor. It creates two new different merger forms, which evidently you weren't presented with. And those allow for you to end up in the same position as a MUD through a more direct route. Let me explain this. Your proposal says that you expect North Bennington to vote against it, and therefore you expect the unified union proposal to fail, by which you enter into the MUD situation.
Right.
And the MUD situation allows North Bennington to stay the way we are. Since if that is the direction you think it's going and you expect it to go and you want it to go, there's a much more direct route to it. And that is the alternative governance structure in Act 49 with side by side a merged district and an existing district. It allows us to stay the way we are. It gives you the merger that you want. And it's a vote that can be a yes vote for everybody without changing the opportunity platform that they present their students. And it's a lot cleaner, a lot clearer, and I do not understand why we're having this discussion, because that was the obvious choice.
Well, she did talk about Act 49 at the time. She did talk about the two effects of Act 49. One was a sort of Phase 2 red, a side-by-side, and an MUUD. And she also said
That's an old red term. That's not what's in Act 49.
well, these are my notes. Maybe I biffed it on the notes. But she also talked about an extension of the deadlines. But my point, Ray, is I apologize if we overlooked an option, but we asked her to come down and give us all the options.
You have overlooked an option.
And she talked about it.
presented that option last October. It's in her presentation, which I have on my computer.
So
it's still available.
Well, she did not express that it was still available to us. I don't know why, but we pressed her hard on which options are still available to us.
We won't speculate on that.
Yeah, again, it sounds like some people think there's other options, and we've got an option that's in front of us. And I guess I'd like to, rather than you two debate this, let's ask if there's any other questions.
Yeah, may I finish? I'd just like to say I appreciate the work that the committee did, but I do believe that some options that are available were not presented, and what we end up with is a convoluted proposal that in order to get where you want to go, you want it to fail on the vote in a partial way. I think that's crazy.
Okay.
You don't have to go there.
Okay. Dick, did you have a question?
No, I just wanted to highlight, this is pre-K through 12, not just.
Right.
And also that.
Any other
there's
board
gonna be
members?
A lot of informational sessions that this group has to present so that folks in towns get some good ideas about what's going on and get a good opportunity to ask questions.
Nelson, it might be worth
Before
asking the
that
other
vote.
46 people what I missed, because I just did stream of consciousness. But
I tried to read through all the information, and so one of the things that I didn't really see, and maybe I missed it, is every one of the districts had some desires, I know, and some things that they wanted to keep, some of the things that they wanted to bring forward. And I didn't know whether there was a list that separated them out and says that, Pound was saying, I really want this or this or this. BSD wanted this, or North Bennington wanted this, so that, and everybody can see exactly when you was going through the process what it is that each one of them wanted and what it is that we couldn't do based on their desires. Along that line, that would maybe help out there somewhere in the future. I didn't see it that way.
Well, we did follow a sequential process that Dan took us through. I'm not sure we have the bullet list you're talking about, but we did follow a sequential process that really started, again, with values. Why should we do this at all? Why should we even waste our time thinking about this? And besides the fact that it's the law and that there are incentives. And so I tried to summarize those very briefly when I first started talking. But you're right that every community had some things they wanted to bring in, but there were surprisingly few areas that we were in disagreement about. So one thing, I know Jackie wants to say something about this, is the school closings. So there were some people that felt there should be a longer period of time before the new district could close an outlying school if it needed to. Other people felt it should be shorter. And so we had some back and forth about, well, what period of time is long enough that the system settles down and people know what's going on, but not so long that it ties the hands of the new district inappropriately.
Yeah, I saw those options in there, and I'm saying, well, that's one of the things that everybody was concerned about, really, is the closing down of a school.
You probably should make a statement on that timetable.
Yeah.
It's 5 years.
5 years,
Yeah.
yeah.
So people out there that's watching can also understand.
It is from when the district formed, so it's actually longer than that.
Yeah, I was going to say it's longer than 5 years from this date, because they have
From
people.
when it's operating.
I mean, we also had to wrestle with, all the hot topics.
Right.
Sixth grades, what's going to happen to sixth grade? Debt. What happens to debt? What happens to assets? What happens to... So we had to kind of look at all of that stuff. I will say that the last committee ended up saying, we want some numbers, and that's when we disbanded, right at the point of wanting numbers. So we did generate numbers that you saw in here.
Right, everything looked, I mean, good and clear in terms of that, but I'm just saying that distasteful list of the things that didn't get put forward as to why there's opposition.
Mm-hmm.
That's the one that I couldn't pull out clearly.
Well,
And all the information, so I have to say you did a real good job of putting the information together. It covers all of the things that I see we did, but I don't, the other things that are opposition.
thank you for that, but this has lots of deficiencies.
Yeah.
You know, it's not a perfect we worked really hard on this. Like I say, everybody hates a good compromise, but I think what we were trying to get at is something that's better than what would happen if we didn't do it. So we were trying to steer in the places we felt like we could steer the process. We were trying to steer it to help our small communities, to help our big communities, you know, to try to make things a little better for us, a little more money, a few more years of guaranteed non-school closings, a little protection about not moving the sixth grade, you know, the things that were important to people, we tried to bake into it to the extent that we could.
School attendance.
School attendance, you know, one of the things that was really important to me is I would really like to see inter-district school choice. So I'd like to see people be able to move around from any elementary school they want within the new district. So if it's not working out for you in Shaftesbury and you want to go to school in Pownell, or your mother works in Pownell or something, and it's convenient to go there, that that you could do a school choice thing within the district. So for me, that was something that I wanted to see get baked in, and we tried to work the different things for the communities in as best as possible. But unfortunately, I don't have a list for you.
Okay,
Maybe we should generate one.
well, that's what I'm getting at, because there's,
If we get to that point, the meeting on the 31st, we have a tentative meeting scheduled for the 31st, is to start to generate those kinds of documents. And what would be the talking points, but we got some other issues that we gotta take care of, work out first.
Okay,
yeah.
Dave?
So just, I mean, it sounds like we're in a sticky place here, and it's gonna be difficult to get a legal answer that everyone is agreeable to between now and whenever we would have to warn the election, the vote. So is there any role, I guess my question is there any role for this board in getting from wherever you are right now to wherever we might end up?
I think, yes, there's a role for this board, and I will tell you what it is in about 2 weeks. I really think that by early September, we're going to know a lot more about how we're moving forward with this. There are a lot of different, and Matthew and I spent a long time today talking about a lot of different possibilities of how this might go between now and the 31st. So I don't know what's going to happen on the 31st, but I can guarantee you we're having a meeting.
We might want to.
It's going to be a long one.
We might want to remind people what the timeline is and why this is.
Okay.
And it works back from November 30th.
Well, and so there are some things that are driving this that frankly are somewhat odious. You know, it's not, everybody hates to be driven by state mandated deadlines and whatnot, but nevertheless, what we're working with right now is after the extension, we would need to have taken our vote and have it ratified by November 30th in order to receive the tax incentives that I've been talking about. And those tax incentives are a lot of money, but they're not enough money that we should do the wrong thing. You know, it's not something where we should race into something that's not good for the community. So we have to really be walking that fine line of working with some urgency and precision, which I think we've tried to do this summer, but also not being reckless as we make that move. So we're in a difficult spot right now. I don't know how it's going to unravel, but I do think that we're going to find some way for it to unravel. And just to let you know, David, you know, if nothing happens and November 30th comes and goes, then the state will tell us how we're going to merge. they'll come down here and they'll probably merge us in some way, not too dissimilar from what we've suggested, although we won't get the incentives. So we'll be missing that.
Nelson, can I talk, because I got a long way home
Uh,
in the corner in the dark. And
Go ahead.
number one, I'm not for this at all. I think we should have studied the alternative structure. I don't know. I think we should have studied the alternative structure, number one. This gives us virtually nothing. There's no guarantees to any of this. We could be closing schools in a matter of 6, 7 years that we shouldn't be closing. We're going to change the flavor of all of our communities and the quality of life in all of our communities, from Woodford to North Bennington to Pownell, Shasbury, Bennington. And I'm just not for it. And I don't believe you're right about the MAU. We have an agreement in MAU. You have to have 5 towns get out of this agreement. The state did not do anything, I don't believe, to trump all of that. I don't think legally they can. I've checked with my lawyer, and I've been the one from the beginning in on this law thing from years ago, and I don't believe any of that's true. So I'm going to be urging people to vote no in Bennington, and I hope everybody else does. And if North Bennington can stay out of this, or Pownell can stay out of this, I hope they do. Because this is a rush plan. We don't even know how we're going to get the next board picked. You know, no offense. Everybody in these communities should be able to be on this new board, not just the people that are sitting here. So I think rushing for the small incentives that will go away very quickly. We have a $40 million, $50 million budget in all of this, and we're basically worried about chump change. And the long-term thing, you just said it yourself, is what you should be concerned about. And I don't want to see schools closed because some ultimate board thinks, well, we can do it this way. And I don't want to see the 6th graders be yanked out of these other schools. If the people in those communities have bought and paid for those schools and those taxes and all of the equipment for those children and the teachers, I don't want them to have no say. To say, no, our 6th grade's got to now go up to middle school. So in my mind, this stinks. I appreciate the work you've done, but don't rush it for little pennies that you might think you're saving. And I hope the people out there vote no if you bring it forward. And well, how did it get picked October 10th? That's going to be the date that you're going to. Bennington School Board hasn't even reviewed this, have they?
So what we had proposed originally was to have the vote on October 10th because there's a sewer bond vote on that day anyway. So it would be efficient not to have the town clerk running 2 separate votes and mobilizing 2 separate sets
Who
of.
made that decision?
So that was, we calendared that as a committee. You know,
So your school board hasn't even met yet to decide this, correct?
we haven't, nothing has been decided on that. That's it. Right now, it's a proposed date. So, and we still could push that back as far as late as November 30th. So, you know, that's all part of the conversation right now, Mike. And
Yeah, I want to make sure we're not running a debate here over what's a good date and a bad date. At this point, there is no date really
No.
set, right?
No.
Okay.
And
No
this
date.
is supposed to be just an information session to let us know where you are and so forth, I think, along that line. And anything else that be taking place at the subcommittee levels of concern.
Yeah, but I want the public to have a chance to speak.
I also would like you to try to meet somewhere closer to downtown so I can be there. You got the Bennell School, you got the high school. It isn't like you're drawing huge crowds here. You can almost 50 people in my living room. So I wish you'd be a little considerate for people that don't drive. And I don't drive anymore. And I took a lot to get up here, so I'd like you people to be considerate of everybody in the communities. Thank you.
Thank you.
And there can be a revote of this too. There can be a revote if the vote goes one way. Somebody can put out a petition to revote it.
Thank you, Mike.
Nelson, just as a point of information, Articles 9 and 10 of the Articles of Agreement speak specifically about how the new board would be elected, the representation from each of the districts that exist now. So that is available and it is built in.
And that's online, so people can read it.
yeah, and I have a lot of details on how we would go about that if we decide that that's the thing to do. Work with the town clerks, the petition system. You know, we know what that system is. We're just not at the point of rolling it out. So I beg to differ with Mike on almost every point, but I won't bother.
Yeah. Okay, let's have, go ahead.
Okay.
Is North Bennington steering this vote? Is everything based on what they do? And I don't know if this is even possible, but can North Bennington buy their way out of the union so they're not even part of this? It seems like they don't even want to be a part of this.
I don't know the answer to that. I think that's more than this board is capable of saying. Or
I would
answering.
say North Bennington has been an active, engaged partner, and I know this sounds political, Joe, but it's a tough knot to untie, and we've been talking about different options. We really have been trying to work through things. A lot of it has to do with the setup that's been in place for a long time, and a direction that they chose a long time ago, which is which is a great direction, frankly. It's just not the direction that we've all chosen. And then Act 46 came down and made those two things not mesh very well. So it's wrong and inaccurate to sort of put it all on North Bennington. Yeah. I didn't mean to accuse you of that, right? But I have been accused of putting it all on North Bennington's shoulders, and I just want to take every opportunity to say, I don't see it that way. You know, I see this as being, something can be, not everything's antagonistic, you know? Some things are just difficult, and I think that this is difficult, but it doesn't have to be antagonistic.
Okay. Fran, you've had your hand up for a while.
Yeah, it's too heavy to hold up. Frank Kenny Shasberry. It's my understanding, and I asked this question at the last MAU meeting, if North Bennington does not decide to hold a vote, then this is all null and void. Is that still correct?
We don't know.
Okay,
So
so you
we don't
can't-
know. We really don't. And it's a legal nuance. There are conflicting opinions. There are conflicting laws, and we're working through that. Frankly, I would love to come up with something better than letting the courts decide how this is going to be. I'd like to come up with something that feels like it works for the communities and gets at everybody's goals. I'm not sure we can do that, but that's what we'd like to try to do. But the very question you've asked is really pertinent, and I think at this moment unanswerable. There are different opinions on that.
Okay. And as of tonight, I'm hearing now, before it was October 10th, now we don't know if it's going to be October 10th, and now it can be pushed back. It's kind of like, you know, I remember Nancy Pelosi saying, well, you need to vote for it to see what's in it, and we all knew what was in it. So I think, for my purview, I think North Bennington and Shasberry would be nice if we could do something together and share our schools to keep the cost down. Now, I've helped save millions of dollars in the Shasberry district. I don't see that happening in the near future. So this merger, I think, is really a bad deal, but that's just my opinion. Thank you.
Any, Fran? Okay.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Jackie wants to. Get it up.
That's all right. My concerns are you keep talking about all these incentives we're gonna get. And I've said this from the very beginning, and we've been told this numerous times through the study committee, that the money is going to be used for lawyers. It's basically why they're giving us the incentives, so that you can break all the contracts we all have with our districts, our charters and stuff like that, because it's going to cost you a lot of money to do all that stuff, to become one union. So that money's going to be, no, the taxpayers aren't going to see it. And in the end, in 5 years, 4 years, whatever, we're going to have to tack on all that's been taken off to our budgets, and then we're going to be in real critical shape. That's my first thing. So I really wish you wouldn't talk about incentives. It just, because BSD alone, 1 year, Governor Douglas wanted us to reduce our budget by 5%. Well, we reduced it. 2 years later, we couldn't get a budget passed because we had to bring the cost that, what it really costs to educate. There are several issues in this, and I'll bring it up at the meeting next week, that I'm concerned about in your articles of agreement. You guys did a really good job. You worked really hard. And Leon, I can answer your question. If you read all the minutes, you can compile a list easily.
Oh, I just wanted, I didn't.
We could have compiled it for you, though, and maybe we should have.
And just on the dates, I mean, the window on the October 10th, which was just a suggestion at this point and a goal, is getting very narrow, because Don said, we understand the mechanics of that date. And so we know that we have a deadline of November 30th. And we know that if that vote happens, somebody can petition anytime 30 days. So the vote really doesn't become valid to after 30 days. So the Act 46 committee said, really, we shouldn't be having any vote after October 30th. October 30th, close enough to October 10th. Why put Bennington and North Bennington through a vote and 2 weeks later have them do it again? But it hasn't gone to the individual committees, school boards to vote yet, because the language is still being worked out. We don't have a ballot to warn at this point.
Yeah. The truth is, I think, from talking to Cassie, the Bennington Town Clerk, who's such an incredible font of information, you know, her feeling is that if it was just an up or down vote on merging, that it would not be very much extra effort, because it would be up or down on sewer and up or down on merging. Two things, they could hand count them, they wouldn't have to pull out the machines, but it can't be that. So because of statute, and this is something that we can't get around, I've tried, because of statute, we have to vote on merger at the same time as we vote on the slate of new directors. So Mike's gone now, Mr. Bethel's gone now, but he brought up a process for selecting those directors. He's right that it's a short timeline, but if the merger is successful, we will also need to be voting for directors at the same vote. And so petitions will need to be taken out, and they will be brought to the town clerks, because there is no school district clerk of a district you haven't created yet. So the petitions would go to the town clerks, and then the individual would be voted on at large.
Which would make it a complicated vote for a hand count, so.
So you have to use the machines, right? Thank you. That's where I started out. I got off the rails. So you have to use the machines, drag all the machines out, and you can't do it. It's too many people to do a hand count. So she was saying, what the heck? Do it as 2 votes.
I have one other thing. Just for information. If the vote goes down by November 30th, the board still can compile information and present it to the state by December 31st to remain the way they are.
They not only can, they have to.
We have to.
Yeah, they're required to.
And just, this is a general comment. I'm the SBA, and I'm not running again, so if anybody's interested, get the petition in. Or no, call up Nicole Mace and put your name in.
Well, yeah, for this new board, that we need to get the petitions and the description of what they are, so people can fill them out. So basically, there seems to be a lot to do with some information we still need to go with. But one of the questions I didn't hear was, you know, we talked about moving students around in 5 years. What about staff? One of the things is I noticed in here, they talk a little bit about efficiency of staff. Are we looking at utilizing them in a more efficient way? So if there was one student in this school and they got moved, you had none.
Can you take that, Jim?
Employees of one district. So, yeah, similar to how SVSU employees, special employees, can be moved from building to building as student population shifts or needs or individual students move, right. It would work the same way.
That's good.
You also probably saw the tax information, and I, you know, again, I don't want to harp on the numbers, because these are guideline numbers. These are based on real things. These are based on real data from the SU. But every community, by combining assets and combining debts, you know, it would have an impact on communities. And Bennington's tax rate would go up a little bit, 2 cents, you know, before the incentives. Pownell's tax rate would go down about 7 cents. Shaftesbury's tax rate would stay even at 0, and Woodford's would go up about 12 cents. With the incentives, Bennington's tax rate goes down about 6 cents. Again, that's only in the first year, and to Jackie's point, it's only 4 years of that incentive that you get. But Pownell would be down 15 cents in that first year. Shaftesbury tax rate would be down 8 cents in the first year, and Woodford, the tax rate would be still up, but only up 4 cents in that first year. So You know, we recognize, Dick, that it's gonna be a hard pull in Woodford, but I think that the preservation of the small schools grant and, you know, trying to keep your school going is what we came down with as being the big benefit for Woodford in this. So.
Mary?
John, was the question ever answered about the common level of appraisal that the town would need to be doing in order to be kind of on the same baseline? You're a consultant at one of the meetings, and I asked that question. It's always been a very definite issue across the state with how that appraisal's done. Those would have to probably be done in each of the town, and you as assistant town clerk, or the assistant to the chair of the select board, you know, do you have a cost that goes along with that? Doing a reappraisal, and especially for Bennington, is a pretty big number, and it would be significant for all of the other towns, which I don't think have put into even consideration or thought at this point. So was that question ever answered?
It was answered, and I don't know if I have the document with me. It might have just been something he put up on the screen.
Yeah, I
Do
don't have it.
you remember? Yeah. Murray, I'm gonna have to get you that. He did take your question, and he did work through, does anybody else have it here? He did work through a worksheet for us on the CLA, and we were satisfied with his presentation, but
I think it is.
It's in the study.
Yeah, I was gonna say there's something in here. I never read it.
did it make it into the,
Yes.
Yeah, it's in there, I just don't know what page it's on. Yeah.
okay, here we go. Yeah, so on page 10, 25, projected tax implications using data with CLAs, or without North Bennington with CLAs.
Table 3.
Those are the numbers I was just quoting you from, Mary.
Okay, but you would probably look to be having to do reappraisals in your communities as well at a pretty significant cost.
I don't know that that's necessary. I have to do more. I can't answer that right now.
Yeah, I was gonna say, the state requires you to do a reappraisal when you're at 80% or less, and you're at 93 according to this. So it's not that you'd be forced to do it by the state, that's for sure. Because Powell's gone through that a couple times, and if you notice, ours is 107% now because of this.
Went through it one too many times.
No, property values are
Yeah.
dropping, and
Right.
appraisals are staying up,
Right.
the
Yes.
appraised values.
So we're at 93.61, yeah.
You probably haven't done it in a while.
I don't want to speak without the right information, but I don't recall, I mean, certainly there's one tax rate, but adjusted by the common level appraisal within each town, but I don't remember hearing that alters the schedule that the town is already on for appraisals.
I didn't hear that, but I don't know, I just don't know the answer to that question, Mary, and I'll have to get the answer and get it to you.
Okay, it's sounding as though this evening, there's many questions still out there that really need to be answered, especially the legal implication that you don't seem to be able to get an answer to that baffles me. You've got, you know, the state telling you one thing, they wrote the law, and then you've got your school attorney that's telling you something else. That needs to be addressed and addressed immediately.
Yeah, we're working on that, and I can't tell you everything we're working on, but trust me, we're working on it.
So the questions I would include the superintendent's report.
I'll be brief, Joe. Don, I really appreciate something you said just a moment ago, that things don't need to be adversarial simply because they're difficult. And so what I'm about to say, I say with that spirit, okay? Generally speaking, and maybe the details will be different, if we have a merger imposed upon us by the state, we will still have to share debt, we'll still have to share assets. If we have a merger imposed on us by the state, we're still going to have a question of how we're going to have representation. If we have a merger imposed upon us by the state, we will still have the question of when schools will be closed, if ever. We will still have to deal with all of these issues and all these problems that we are afraid of if we have something imposed on us. The only difference is we will not have that say in what is imposed upon us. So I very much appreciate the work of the committee, because I think it's critical that we take charge of this and not just wait for something to be thrust upon us. I wanted to put that out.
And
Thank you.
even if the districts vote no, they could still turn around and get forced to merge anyway,
Sure.
so.
This is the kind of document that's very easy to be critical of. There's a lot to pick on for everybody. I think it's probably worth saying that June, July, August, we worked very hard and had frequent meetings, and everybody on the committee just about showed up to every meeting. And it was not easy stuff, but I really appreciated the fact that the people that were on the committee spent so much of their beautiful summers, maybe it was rainy most of those days, but spent, their beautiful summers, working on this. And Amy Dobson and from Bennington, Dick France from Woodford, Jeff Leake from Shaftesbury, Lori Lingner from Pownell. Let's see. Well, that was actually Cindy. You ended up coming, Brownell. Aaron McEnany from Shaftesbury, Dan Monks from Bennington, John Peasley from Pownell, and Chayla Sikora from Bennington. You guys were great and really showed up for trying to make this happen. So I know it's, as I say, everybody hates a compromise, but we put a lot of work into this, and this is what we came up with, and we hope it will work for the community in some fashion by the time we get done with it.
Okay, thank you.
So we're going to close this. Thank you very much
Okay.
for coming.
Thanks.
Thank you, Don.
Very good. Very informative. Thank you.
Thank you for giving my report.
Okay, did you have anything else to report?
No.
No? Okay. Chair's report. Okay, I'll report that the next meeting, September 27th at 7 p.m. here. And the other thing I ask of everybody that's watching is please read the merger study report, which can be found on the SVSU website under the Act 46 group, as was said earlier. As you heard our discussion, I think it's very important that you people read it, understand that we're trying to do some things that are real difficulty, but needs to be done. So talk to your friends, neighbors, and everybody else to do the same. And that's where I'll end my report. Any other?
Yes.
Yeah.
On the others, you can see items FYI for discussion. It was the SVSU student enrollment availability will be coming out in September. What I wanted to discuss and just make sure that everybody agreed to move a step further than what we are with this. What that involved was the student count, and then we put attendance on there. And that went over really well throughout the year by district, the seat attendance. And so I got approached by several people around saying, well, that's student attendance, what about teachers' attendance? And I told them I would bring it up here. I did talk with individuals in the central office that managed that particular portion of that. It wouldn't be anything too difficult to do in terms of just saying student enrollment data, attendance data. It would probably could add teachers and students enrollment data along that line so that we can be positive is what we're trying to do. We're trying to tell the students that being presence on the job as well as being present at the school is very important. And why not be role models by having the various districts show in this same document with the teachers, with the student attendance, that the teachers are all here in terms of 100% or 99% of the time, each one of the months along that line. So I said I would bring it up. It's something that's not too complicated to do, and I was wanting to find out whether everybody would be willing to go ahead and endorse that. And that'll be an FYI information piece, just like it is. You won't need to do anything with it, but it's a piece of information that's used by the individuals that look at it for the very reasons that we just talked about.
Comments? Dave?
Okay, so I'm not sure where to start exactly. I'm thinking if I'm a teacher I've got a contract that says I'm allowed to take X number of days off, personal days, sick days. If these teachers as a group take that many days off and it reports here as a number that looks lower than the public or we as board members might think it should be, what are we gonna do? What's the purpose of it exactly?
The purpose is just what I just, I just
explained. So we
explained.
can have a sense, but what are we gonna do with it? What's the
Well,
goal?
you don't do anything with the information now besides what we've been pushing. We can't educate if we don't have students in the classroom. And we have a whole bunch of things associated with that. We can't get kids educated if we don't have teachers there. Now, I grant you there are things, I understand there are contracts and there's days out and so forth. The numbers in terms of how they're reported in the system, the software system, would take in that to consideration for what those should be. What we're looking for is parallel information to be able to show right along with the students in these districts that our teachers are making an effort to be here. Now, whether it's, I mean, if 99% or 100%, if you looked at that data, elementary is almost 100%, and then when you move up, I mean, pre-K is 100%. When you go to elementary, it goes down, and when you get all the way to the high school, the numbers drop off for the seniors. And we're telling them it's very important for them to be in school because they are going to be the ones getting jobs and got to show up to work. We also wanted to have a role model picture by saying, here's, your teachers are all here, why can't you be here? Along that line. So it's some information that I think is worth putting out so that the districts will be able to look and see that along with the data that we asking the students, and it'll do something else in terms of showing the business people that we're trying to do everything we can to keep kids on track for showing up for the commitments, and if they show up, we're going to teach them. And if we have teachers, we're saying we want you there to teach. And so we want to put that positive image out there if on paper.
If this is the desire of the board, and I think because of potential grievance procedures that could happen, you should take a vote to do this, then I would have HR do a mock-up in advance of what this would look like, because there's a couple of questions are coming to mind for me. Are we talking teachers? Are we talking para-educators? Are we talking support staff, maintenance workers, central office workers? It's a complicated question. So if this was a desire of the board, we would do a draft of this and present it maybe at a personnel subcommittee meeting long before we went live with this.
And part of me feels like isn't that the role of administration, to be monitoring that and holding teachers accountable for that, and not necessarily something that gets...
Yeah, I tend to agree that it's not something that should be up on a webpage. But I do think it's not harmful for boards to understand how the teachers and the paras and the rest are working within their buildings.
So one of the goals, and that's, we've talked about, we have to set a meeting for set my goals. So one of the goals that I will be proposing, and I'm already working with HR on this, is an employee dashboard, so that we can get snapshots. I'll give you an example. I had a request for, a personal day, and if it looks like a pattern, we either approve it or deny it. That's part of our management. But it is difficult for me in the system we have right now to get long-term data without going in and doing individuals. So we're interested very much in what Leon's asked for, not necessarily to publicize it, but to use it as we track employee performance and use and potential abuse of that. So we are doing that, but we're looking for a better way to do it.
Yeah, and we should be clear that through the contractual negotiations and stuff, some of those type of questions came up because they were worried that we were tracking in some areas and other. And it really wasn't that. What we were worried about was what you just said. Some people create patterns where they end up taking every other Friday or Monday or something else. And we as the the management needs to understand and know what to do with that.
But that won't be what's on there. What we're talking about, I mean, I'm looking up here, I'm saying, there's, what we have is the number of students in the school. Then we have student attendance.
You get an average.
And we have an average. You don't have individual, just, and I'm gonna use BSD as an example. You got that the percentage of students attending last month, was 98.9% for just say August or July. And then the next one with Woodford would be 99 point some percent for that. Right along for that, next to that will be personnel.
Then you don't lump teachers, it's everybody.
It's just a number, and then when we can, what we're trying to do is be proactive for what we want our kids to grow up and see in terms of comparison and what the job market is saying. We want people to show up, and you guys need to be trying to do something out here to try to help train them as they start out in young age to be attentive to being showing up and all this other kind of stuff. And that's a good role model picture, I think. That's all.
Have a run for Congress.
We need to know their attendance, but that's changing topic.
I just think that this should be the job of the principal, and the principal should take care of any problems like that. This should not be the problem of the boards, not unless there's a problem with the principal.
Well, I don't think Leanne's talking about it being a problem of anybody. What Leanne's saying is providing data to the public that says, here are what we have. Our staff is showing up 99.9% of the time. Our students are showing up 80.9% of the time. It's just, it's numbers, is what it amounts to. And that data is there for anybody that wants to mine it in a public record anyways.
How would like a professional development be?
Well, that's the question, and then we have year-round employees who get vacation time, which they're entitled to, so I wouldn't call that an absence, so it's...
It'd be tricky.
Yeah.
Yeah, you'd have to do it, you have to look at all the points, because training wouldn't be an absence. Personal leave is based on the fact you have vacation or whatever. That's not an absence.
Yeah, there's too many odd things that can happen that would show up as an absence, but it really shouldn't be an absence.
So what could we, we're gonna get, if we can just approve a mock, central office is willing to put the things together, add that on.
I don't know if they are.
Other members of the central office are willing to do that and manage that. We have the software in place already. It's just calling the numbers out and so forth along that line. So I said I would bring it here and have that discussion and so forth in terms of the policy piece and trying to get everybody's buy-in so that we can take another look at the next step. That's all.
Well, I think once the program gets in place, and data mining will occur in many ways for any type of software to store.
Because that is a goal for the SU this year, is to, as you data mine employee attendance, so that we can detect more patterns. We weren't intending to publicly announce it, but to use it as a management tool. And that's something we can discuss and
and I
expand.
think, us being the board that oversees the SVSU, it's good that we understand what that means and how it can be used. One of the big problems you have today is that there's lots of data that's gathered by a lot of people, and some of it's misused. And we don't want to misuse it. What we want to do is use it as a tool to improve things.
And I could see as once we have that mining tool in place, the superintendent gives a periodic update of if we're seeing any trends, like his average daily attendance going down or going up. And those are things that then I see it being a useful tool in negotiations and things like that.
Okay, we talked about that enough?
So we got a nod to go and have. Okay. We have a nod to go ahead and ask them to do a mock-up.
Oh.
I don't have a question on this.
You don't have a question on this?
Not on this.
Is there a motion to do a mock-up? He already said he's going to provide us with something once he gets...
I don't know that I need a motion. I just wanted to, if we have no real oppositions to it, that for him preparing a mock-up so that we can see it, and at that point in time, he can
You're doing it
discuss it.
anyways.
If he has time, don't waste valuable time on it.
What I said is I'm not
You have time.
comfortable doing this without a board going on record the room, because I do anticipate that you potentially going to get a grievance over how you release this information. So, but what I will tell you is that we, HR and I, will work on this, because it is part of the goals that I'm going to propose to the board for this year, so.
Okay.
Thank you, Nelson. I just wonder if there's some discussion can be had about Mr. Bethel's point about where we hold these meetings. I think it's a valid point that, you know, there are many folks in Bennington understanding that these meetings are more than just about Bennington. But if we're going to have a meeting, a public meeting, let's have it in a place that's easy for folks to get to. So I would ask that the chair consider that and maybe identify a different location for these
Well,
meetings.
what we need to do is look at probably the best is downtown is this CDC conference room is where people can get to pretty quick and easily. I know Mike at one point even said, why the heck don't I hold it there? And I said, well, we normally can't get that home, but.
We don't control it.
Right. I move we have the next meeting at Mike's house. I mean, he invited us.
He said it was big enough.
He did.
I heard him.
I don't hear a second.
No, but I think it's reasonable that we do that and look and see.
And I know we didn't do Act 46 there all this summer because we didn't have any access to those schools.
No, we did Act 46, though, at
CDC.
the CDC, except for the last
One
meeting,
meeting.
because they were cleaning their carpets.
Right.
So we couldn't do it. We couldn't do it
Yeah.
at the other schools because they're closed. So who goes back far enough in history to know where MAU held their meetings prior to this school being built?
Central office.
They were in central office,
Central office.
Yeah, that's kind
which has handicap accessibility issues, so.
Yeah, and it'd be kind of hard for him to get out there with his,
Yeah.
my understanding is he came up here on his wheelchair and went back home on his
We
wheelchair,
had them in the red buildings as
So-
well back out where the CDC was.
which I think is a problem, a different problem, not the school problem, it's the having transportation for handicapped.
Move we adjourn.
Got a motion to adjourn?
Second?
All those in favor say aye. There's some paperwork that needs to be signed that's going around, so please make sure to sign it.